Isaiah the 60th chapter. I'm going to start at the 10th verse and read on down. It says, "And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee." So the sons of strangers, that's talking about the actual strangers, the other nations, shall build up thy walls. We're going to have them in slavery. So they're going to be building the kingdom of heaven, because we're not building nothing. We're not lifting a hand to move nothing. It says, "For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually, they shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles." That's talking about the actual Gentiles. We're going to take all of their substance,
where you belong.
and that their kings may be brought.
Look at me.
For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish, yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Verse 13, "And the glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, the box together to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious." So the land of Israel, the land of Jerusalem, is going to be made glorious. It's going to be made glorious once again. The kingdom is going to be built up. We had a taste of that during the time of Solomon's reign, which was for about 40 years. Verse 14, "The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet. And they shall call thee the city of the Lord." The word Zion means monument, the monument of the Holy One of Israel. "Whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shalt suck the breasts of kings," meaning we're going to take all their substance. "And thou shalt know that I am the Lord thy power, the Lord and thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. For brass I will bring thee gold, and for iron I will bring thee silver, and for wood brass, and for stones iron. And I will make thy officers peace, and thine exactors righteousness. Violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation, and thy gates praise. The sun shall no more thy light by day, neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto thee, but the Lord shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and the power thy glory. The sun shall no more go down," meaning our kingdom is not going to go down. In other words, once we get back in power, we're going to be in power forever. The sun is never going to go down on our kingdom again. The sun is never going to set on our kingdom. We're going to always shine, and we're going to always be in that glory once we get into the kingdom of heaven. There's no more going back into slavery under the other nations. Esau's not going to rise back up and put us in captivity. Ham, Japheth, Ishmael, none of the other nations are going to rise up and take us down ever again. When we get on top this time, we're going to remain on top. "Neither shall thy moon withdraw itself, for the Lord shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended." So no more mourning, no more crying, no more vexation of spirit, no more weeping, no more hopelessness because of the condition that we're in as Israelites right now. Verse 21, "Thy people also shall be all righteous, they shall inherit the land forever. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified." Verse 22, "A little one shall become 1,000. This is in the kingdom. So what is this talking about? We're going to have sex. Again, like I said, the 2/3 that are going to pass in this destruction, the 2/3 are going to come back through the 1/3 that make it. The Lord said, 2/3 shall be cut off and die, and the third will I bring through the fire. It says, "A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, the Lord, will hasten it in time."
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Jesus who rule well, teach well, being great examples to our young brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakakadash. push them get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful leg, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. All right, and what I want to get into, with this lesson, this morning, news and prophecy, just go down, a little history, dealing with the petrodollar, and it shows how, because the petrodollar really shows how America became so dominant on the global scale, because the dollar has a far more reach than the military. And when you really look at, the petrodollar, all right, this strong military, okay, this dominant military force was a product of this petrodollar, man. You know, America had a formidable, very formidable military, and they was mighty. They had a strong military before then, but when you go into how the petrodollar was able to soup up, America's military and just, go so far beyond all the other militaries of the earth, well, you have to go back to the petrodollar. The way that America was just to excel, so far beyond, these other militaries where their petrodollar played a major part, you know. So we're gonna go into the history of the petrodollar, but first we're gonna go into the scriptures, that give, all right, that paint a picture in the spirit, all right, of why the devil Esau Edom, came to be what, the scripture say the earth was given into his hand. So how did this man, get the earth into his hand? Okay, because we know the scriptures say it, but then how did that practically play out in the earth, man? Hey, this petrodollar, man. You know, hey, this man was able to purchase it. The devil has been able to purchase the earth through this goddamn petrodollar, man. You see, he's been able to run governments, okay, create systems of control, through this petrodollar, man. Okay, and that's why with the digital currency, he wants to take it to another level of control. Okay, but as we, go through the scriptures, all right, then we see how these things play out, and it just shows you that the heavenly Father is faithful and true, to his word, because he allows things to play out, all right, according to this word. Okay, so when you go to Hebrews 11:20, it says, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. You see, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. Okay? So concerning things to come, all right, which are in these days now. So Jacob was blessed with the fatness of the earth, okay, the dew of heaven, which was the whole world. And Esau was blessed with the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven as well, okay. But Esau's blessing would be temporal, and Esau's blessing will come first, okay. And also Esau's blessing would be maintained through the sword, okay. Esau would maintain his blessing through the sword, okay. Now Yahweh Shai is coming with war, okay, to take the kingdom, you see. But after this war, this is the last war, you see. The war Yahweh Shai is coming to wage in righteousness, there will never be a need to wage war anymore. We're going to get to enjoy our blessing forever. You see, Esau has to go to war, okay, to maintain his blessing. That's why he's constantly at war. And that's the difference between the blessings of Jacob and Esau. But Esau, it was set up for Esau to have the fatness of the earth at the coming of Yahweh Shai. Okay, that's why Esau was blessed going back to Isaac. All right, Isaac blessed Esau going back to Genesis. So Esau will be in power at the return of Yahweh Shai. Okay, and Yahweh Shai was going to come, okay, and overwhelm Esau, all right, with military force, man, with true power. Okay, because Esau is used to maintaining and expanding his empire through the sword. Well, Yahweh Shai is going to come in this man with the sword. Because what did Yahweh Shai tell Peter? If you live by the sword, you're gonna die by the sword. And Esau lives by the sword. So he's gonna perish by this sword, man. And Yahweh Shai is gonna be the one to bring the sword to him, that power. Okay, and that's gonna usher in the blessing of what? Of Jacob. Yahweh Shai is bringing in this everlasting blessing of Jacob. Okay, he's going to end the blessing of Esau, and he's going to usher in the everlasting blessing of Jacob. Now, let's go here to Genesis to the blessings. Okay, dealing with Jacob and Esau. Okay, so you go to Genesis 27, and I started at 27, read through, get to the point. Genesis 27 through 27, it says that he came near and kissed him, and this is when, Rachel and Jacob. All right, the spirit was on Rachel and Jacob to portray, okay, for Jacob to portray Esau, because the blessing of the firstborn, was to Esau. Okay, but in the spirit, we know it was always for Jacob. Okay, but the Lord had this controversy play out, for the sake of drama, okay, in the movie, to create this ongoing rivalry, okay, between good and evil in the earth, man. All right, which is Jacob and Esau. One is set up against another. Okay, good against evil. Okay, so to keep that narrative going, all right, the Lord set it up where Jacob will supplant the birthright from Esau, and we're going to show you just reading this that it was always meant for Jacob anyway. Okay, it says, and he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment and blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of the field which the Lord have blessed. Therefore, the Most High give thee the dew of heaven and the fatness of earth and plenty of corn and wine. So that's the earth and all its resources, man. Okay, that's possession of the earth and everything in it. That's what given to Jacob and his descendants, and we're descendants of this blessing, man. Okay, we're descendants of this promise. Okay, and through faith, there's a remnant that's going to go directly into this promise. It's going to inherit this blessing, man. At the end of this captivity, this is the blessing that will be inherited by the elect, man. And eventually 2/3 they're going to be born into this blessing, man. Okay, verse 29 says, "Let people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's son bow down to thee. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blesseth thee, man." So this is the nations, possession of the nations. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen, okay, for an inheritance, okay, in the othermost parts of the earth for a possession, man. You see? So the people of the planet Earth are a part of the blessing as well. Okay, so what's a blessing? All right, what's having abundance? What's having the earth without having, all right, servants, man? Okay, you see, they come together. All right, the earth and the servants, where they come together. Okay, and what I say, well, let people serve thee. Let's go to the word serve. All right, just to go into our blessing that we got coming, man, and it's gonna be in righteousness. Okay, that first 1,000 years is gonna be rigorous because wickedness has, all right, to be chastened, all right, out of the heathen, man. Okay, so when you go here to the word serve in the Hebrew is abad, all right, which means to what? To work, to serve, to labor, to do work for another, to serve another by labor. Okay, to work, to be till of the land, because we're gonna have the earth. To serve as subjects. Okay, to compel, to labor, to work, to cause to labor. You see, so these are heathens, okay, as a part of our inheritance, where they're giving us as servants, man, as laborers. Okay, and that's part of the blessing that we're coming into. I say it's going to be in righteousness, man. Okay, and after that 1,000 years, these nations will, outside of Esau, which is going to be destroyed. All right, the lineage of Esau will be destroyed out of the earth after 1,000 years, man. Okay, but these nations will get to enjoy a righteous kingdom. Okay, they'll never be a part of the covenant. Okay, they'll never be immortal. They won't have spiritual powers, and it's always going to be a great gulf fix. Between the highest heathen, okay, and the common Israelite is going to be a great gulf fix, man. Okay, it's going to be a major difference. Okay, verse 30 says, and it came to pass as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in, okay, from his hunting. So Esau comes after what Jacob is blessed. Okay. It says that he also made savory meat and brought it into his father and said unto his father, let my father arise and eat of his son's venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac his father said unto him, who art thou? And he said, I am thy son, thy firstborn Esau. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly and said, where is he that have taken venison and brought it me? And I have eaten all before thou camest, and have blessed him. Okay, and have blessed him, yeah, and he shall be blessed. And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with a great exceeding bitter cry, and said unto his father, bless me, even me also my father. So yeah, this devil, because he comes in, which he sold the birthright in chapter 25, but in his mind, he's going to come, and get it anyway. Okay. And Isaac told him, like, look, whoever I blessed before you came in, okay, he's surely going to be blessed. Okay. He said he's surely going to be blessed. Okay. So there's nothing that Isaac tried to do to reverse that because it was set up in the spirit. Okay. You read the end of verse 33 says, and I have eaten all before thou camest and have blessed him, yeah, and he shall be blessed. Okay. So it was always set up for Jacob to get the birthright, and we're going to show you that Isaac's going to double down again. I just always like to prove that point. Okay. And then we'll get on in the lesson. Then it says, and he said, thy brother came with subtlety and have taken away thy blessing. And he said, his is not he rightly named Jacob, which means Yahweh, which is to supplant. For he have supplanted me these two times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he have taken away my blessing and said, hast thou not reserved a blessing for me? Okay. And he sold his birthright. He didn't take it away. Okay. You sold their birthright, man. He intentionally sold their birthright. See, this is what the devil wants back. He wants his birthright. He wants the blessing of Jacob. And he thinks that he's going to bless himself on the left hand side. Okay, he says, and Isaac answered and said unto Esau, behold, I have made him thy Lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants, and with corn and wine have I sustained him. And what shall I do now unto thee, my son? So he's pretty much telling Esau, Isaac is telling Esau, man, I gave Jacob everything. There's nothing left to give, even you. Okay, he owns you. You're going to be his possession. What can I give you? Okay. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above. So this sounds like what? The blessing given to Jacob. Okay. But it's a stipulation that Esau blessing. Okay. In order for him to maintain that blessing, he will have to, all right, Isaac had to give him something else. And see, his blessing was always temporal. Only the blessing, all right, that was given to Jacob is eternal. That's why you can read, all right, about the blessings and the promises that's coming to Jacob throughout the rest of the scriptures that speak about, a kingdom that should have no end. Okay, an everlasting kingdom. He shall reign forever and ever and ever. That's never said about Esau's kingdom. Esau's kingdom always has an expiration. It always has an end. Jacob's kingdom don't. Okay, so we're in the end of Esau's kingdom, in the beginning of Jacob's everlasting kingdom, which is going to be established through Yahweh Shah. Genesis 27 and 40 says, and by the sword thou shalt live and shall serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So the scriptures say that where he shall live by the sword thou shalt live. Okay, now let's get two things here. All right. Let's go here to let's get this word fatness. Okay, because even when you go into this Hebrew word fatness, okay, you go to fatness and the okay, and it says what oil, olive oil, or you even have the oil in it, oil. All right, fertile spots or places. Okay, and And when you go into the places rich in resources, okay, how did this devil get possession of all these places? Through the sword. Okay? And it got to the point when he created that Petro dollar, man, he was able to weaponize the currency itself, man. Okay? But how did this devil get the fertile places of the world? Okay, through the sword. You see, that's why I said, in by thy sword thou shalt live. So when you go here and you get this word sword, I mean my bad, this word live. All right, you go into this word live, which is kaya. Okay, and it says what to live. All right, to have life, to remain, to live prosperously. So how did this devil live prosperously? Through the sword. Okay, when he came and conquered the Americas, it was through the sword. North, Central, South America, the sword. Okay, colonized Africa through the sword. The islands through the sword. Okay, you see. So this man is able to live prosperously. Why? But because of this sword, man. Okay, the devil, that's his blessing is this sword. All right, so to live, to have life, to continue in life, okay, to remain alive. So now he's to the point that he's in survival mode with this sword, man. You know, and that's why you see him being very reckless. Okay, he's very reckless, man, and that's why he's looking, very vulnerable because he's in survival mode with this sword now. Okay, to continue in life, to remain alive, well, it's through that sword, man. Okay, you see, it says to quicken, to revive, and he's trying to revive himself through this sword. Okay, but it's not in his cards, man. He's at the end of his blessing. You know, so the effect of the sword is dwindling because he's at the end of his blessing, man. Okay, when it was time for this devil to make his come up, all right, the Lord had it to where, hey, he couldn't do nothing with him. You see, you couldn't do nothing with him. All right, but now, okay, as the Lord is getting ready to overthrow this man, all right, he's beginning to dwindle. You see, but let's go here because I want to get this. Here we go. Now he's gonna give a thorough explanation. You know, we went into the petrodollar before, but this one here is even more. You know, he's point for point. This is a real solid. You know, documentary. 23 minutes. And it's just real informative. So I thought it'd be good to go back into this. Because it explains how we got to this point. Because you can look at these random events and you hear people talking about the petrodollar. But it's good to know the history of these things and know the origin of these things, and it gives more clarity to where we at now. Okay, and also lets you see what the devil is setting up next. Okay, so let's play this.
Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, July 1974. A US Treasury official named William Simon steps off a plane into 110-degree heat. He is not there as a tourist. He is not there for diplomacy in any conventional sense. He is there to make a deal that will never appear in any treaty, that will never be ratified by any Congress, that will never be formally acknowledged by either government for the next several decades. He is there to make a deal so simple, so elegant, and so consequential that every dollar bill in your wallet right now exists because of what he agrees to in that room. The deal is this. Saudi Arabia will price its oil exclusively in US dollars. Every barrel, every transaction, every sale to every country on earth. In return, the United States will guarantee Saudi Arabia's military security. It will supply weapons. It will protect the House of Saud from its enemies, foreign and domestic. And it will allow Saudi Arabia to quietly purchase US Treasury bonds outside the normal disclosure rules that govern every other foreign government on earth. That is it. No signed treaty, no public announcement, a classified arrangement between two governments, each of which needed the other more than either wanted to admit. But here is what that deal actually did to the world. It meant that any country on earth that wanted to buy oil, and every country on earth needed to buy oil first, had to acquire US dollars. which meant every central bank on earth had to hold US dollar reserves, which meant permanent global demand for the dollar, which meant the United States could run deficits that would have destroyed any other currency, could print money that other nations were compelled to absorb, could fund wars, welfare states, and Wall Street simultaneously, and export the inflation to the rest of the world. For 50 years, this arrangement held, and almost nobody outside of a handful of economists and Treasury officials understood the mechanism that made it work. I went through the declassified diplomatic cables, the Treasury archives, the congressional testimony, and the forensic economic record of what happened before, during, and after this deal was struck. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how it was built, why it is now cracking, and what the historical record says happens to the countries that lose reserve currency status. Stick with me. This one changes how you read every financial headline you will see for the rest of your life. The setup, what broke before the deal was made. To understand the petrodollar deal, you have to understand what it was designed to fix. And what it was designed to fix was a crisis that Richard Nixon had created by accident and then ever made. Go back to 1944. Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. 44 allied nations gather to design the post-war financial order. The agreement they reach is straightforward. The US dollar will be the world's reserve currency. Every other currency will be pegged to the dollar, and the dollar itself will be pegged to gold at $35 per ounce. Any foreign government holding dollars can, at any time, walk up to the US Treasury and exchange them for gold at that fixed rate. This was a promise, a specific, quantified, legally binding promise. The dollar was not just paper, it was a receipt for gold, and for 25 years, the system worked. The United States ran the global economy and the dollar was trusted because the gold was there to back it. Then the United States started spending money it did not have. The Vietnam War, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs, a guns and butter economy that produced exactly what every economist warned it would produce: inflation, and with inflation, a problem.
So you look at the Vietnam War, like we've been speaking on earlier. We've been speaking on lately. The elites. Okay, when they wage these wars, well, they're not waging war for military victory. All right, because America lost the Vietnam War, but what this did, it put America in debt to where they would have to start printing more money than they had. All right, and it put them in debt to who? The bankers. Okay, because when they started to outprint, okay, more money than they had gold, well, this creates inflation, and this is when the bankers come in and bail countries out. Okay, so America was pushed to war, all right, just so they can go into debt. You see, and this how the elites operate in the shadows and keep control over these countries, man. Because one thing that the elites know, a nation that's not in debt can't be controlled. Okay, and that's why a nation that would deny, okay, these IMF, okay, bank loans, okay, well, they will wage war on their nation, okay, and create havoc, put their nation in debt to where they will have to get bailed out, okay, do a regime change that would take the loan, okay, or put so much pressure on these smaller countries, okay, that they will just tap out, and take the loan and take the debt. Because you go here to let's get this real quick. All right, so the elites are always behind the scenes scheming and plotting, to keep these nations in debt, and that's why there's so much emphasis on Iran, because Iran is not in debt to the central banks, the IMF banks. Okay, so just go here. This is Proverbs 22:7 said, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." Okay, so the elites operate off nations being in debt to them. Okay, that's what gives them control over a nation, is the nation being in debt to them. And through this petrodollar, they was able to put all these nations in debt. And one of the things that shielded Iran from taking on the petrodollar debt is because they were sanctioned so long that they didn't have access to the petrodollar. So it created a unique, situation with Iran, and that's why, Iran, the Lord set it up to where they had to deal with Iran. They couldn't just leave Iran alone going into this new world order. Okay? And then in his prophecy, man. Because how else could Iran be this wild boar that come forth with great power? you know? So they had to deal with Iran going into this new world order, man, which they walked into a trap. Okay, just to put that out there. But let's continue on with this.
Governments holding dollars began doing the arithmetic. They held paper that was supposed to be worth gold at $35 per ounce, but the real purchasing power of those dollars was falling. The rational move was obvious. Convert the paper to gold before the gap widened further. France, under Charles de Gaulle, was the most aggressive. De Gaulle had publicly called the dollar's reserve status an exorbitant privilege as far back as 1965. He began systematically converting French dollar reserves to gold and shipping it back to Paris. He even sent a French naval vessel to New York to collect it. By 1971, the arithmetic had become a crisis. The United States held roughly $10 billion in gold reserves. Foreign governments held roughly $80 billion in claims on that gold.
So America only had $80 billion worth. They only had $10 billion worth of gold, but they had printed $80 billion worth of currency, man. Okay, and this is where the scam begins. All right, this is where fiat currency begins. Okay, and she's going to go into it. All right, which the scriptures speak about what? A false balance, man. This is a false balance. Okay, that the devil uses. All right, to run the earth, man. Okay, so let's play this.
Run was coming. The promise was mathematically impossible to keep. On the evening of August 15th, 1971, Richard Nixon went on television and told the American public he was protecting the dollar from international speculators. What he actually did was default. He closed the gold window permanently, without warning, without negotiation, without the consent of a single foreign government that held dollar reserves on the assumption that the Bretton Woods promise was still in force. Overnight, the dollar became pure fiat currency, backed by nothing except the word of the United States government and whatever that was worth. The initial reaction in currency markets was exactly what you would expect. The dollar fell sharply against every major currency. Gold, newly freed from its $35 ceiling, surged. The financial world had just discovered that the anchor was gone. Nixon needed a new anchor. His Treasury Secretary, John Connolly, delivered the line that defined the moment. Speaking to European finance ministers furious about the devaluation of their dollar reserves, Connolly told them, "It is our currency, but it is your problem." It was, but it was also Nixon's problem, and the solution his administration reached for was the one that William Simon flew to Jeddah to finalize in July 1974. Part 1. Why Saudi Arabia said yes. To understand why the Saudis agreed to this arrangement, you have to understand where they were in 1973 and 1974, and specifically, you have to understand what they had just done and what they feared would happen because of it. October 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Egypt and Syria launch a surprise attack on Israel. The United States airlifts weapons and supplies to Israel. In response, the Arab members of OPEC announce an oil embargo against the United States and any country supporting Israel. The embargo is devastating. Oil prices quadruple in 3 months, from $3 per barrel to $12 per barrel. American drivers sit in lines stretching around city blocks waiting for rationed fuel. The United States economy, built on cheap energy, goes into a convulsion. But the Saudis are now holding an enormous amount of suddenly valuable paper, oil revenues that have multiplied overnight, and they face a question that every country faces when it suddenly accumulates large reserves of foreign currency. Where do you put it? How do you make it safe? How do you prevent the country that printed that currency from inflating away its value or freezing your assets in a political dispute? They also face a security problem. The House of Saud rules a kingdom sitting on top of the world's largest proven oil reserves, surrounded by neighbors with armies, revolutionary movements, and reasons to want a piece of what Saudi Arabia has. The one guarantor capable of making those threats go away is the United States. The same United States that is furious about the oil embargo. The same United States that has just watched its economy get brought to its knees by Arab oil producers. Henry Kissinger, Nixon's national security advisor and then Secretary of State, understood the geometry of this situation with the cold clarity that made him the most consequential diplomat of the 20th century. Both sides needed something the other had. The negotiation was not a favor, it was a transaction. The United States needed a new anchor for the dollar, an artificial source of global demand that would replace the gold guarantee Nixon had just destroyed. Oil was consumed by every industrialized nation on Earth. If oil could only be purchased in dollars, the demand for dollars would be structural, permanent, and immune to the decisions of any single country. Saudi Arabia needed security guarantees, a safe home for its oil revenues, and a relationship with Washington that made it untouchable in its own region. The deal wrote itself. By June 1974, the framework was in place. Saudi Arabia would denominate all oil sales in dollars. Saudi oil revenues would be recycled into US Treasury bonds, kept off the public disclosure requirements that governed other foreign holders, and managed through a secret arrangement with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. The United States would supply military equipment, training, and an implicit but understood security guarantee to the kingdom. The other OPEC members followed. By 1975, every member of OPEC was pricing oil exclusively in US dollars. The petrodollar system was complete. Part 2. What the system actually did to the world. The petrodollar arrangement is the most consequential financial architecture of the 20th century and the least understood by the people who live inside it. Here is the mechanism in its precise form. Country X needs oil. Every country needs oil. To buy oil, country X must first acquire US dollars. To acquire US dollars, country X must either export goods to the United States or borrow dollars on international markets. Either way, demand for the dollar is created, structurally, automatically, by the physical requirement of keeping an industrial economy running. This demand has a name in economics. It is called the exorbitant privilege. The phrase de Gaulle, used in contempt in 1965, became the accurate technical description of what the petrodollar system formalized. The United States can run a current account deficit indefinitely because the world needs its currency to function. Every other country on Earth must earn the foreign exchange it spends. The United States can simply print what it needs and the world must accept it because the alternative is not being able to buy oil.
And when this man set this system up, you gotta think about it. This man set up a system to where he can print paper and get actual resources, man. You know, it's a system set up to where the world has to absorb American debt. You see, when we talk about America being 39, $40 trillion in debt, well, that debt is forwarded to the rest of the world. And America still is able to buy the goods and resources that it needs. Okay? Because the dollar is based on, see, he can print a currency right now. All right, this dollar based on the future demand of energy. Okay, and energy demand is going up. Okay, so even though the dollar, because there's so much of it out there, is being inflated, okay, it's still strong because it has a global demand. You know, that's attached to what energy demand, and energy demand is rising. Okay, and that's why it's not easy, you know, the top of the dollar. Okay, and when the dollar, you know, when the Lord pushes these devils to go ahead and collapse the dollar, the whole system gonna collapse. All right, because the whole system is pegged, all right, to American debt. You know, so this man is able to forward all of America's debt to these other nations based on these nations' demand for oil. Okay, and this is why Esau goes to war about this dollar, which he's going to get into. Okay, because these elites have a hell of a system, and this is why they're able to have an unlimited, all right, defense budget for the military. That's why America's military, all right, was able, you know, to uh, to have a budget, okay, 10 times as much as the next military. Okay, this is why America is able to have military hardware throughout the earth, bases throughout all the earth. Okay, airstrips, and you know, have these different deals and alliances, okay, throughout all the earth, man. You know, and was just able to shoot off. Okay, this is when the American military just took off from the rest of the militaries of the earth because of the petrodollar, man. Okay, a blank check for military spending, man. Okay, this is why nations been chilling like this nigga here, you know. But now, you know, we're in the time of the Lord of prophecy, none of that matters. Okay, there was a time when this mattered, but now's the time it don't matter. It don't matter about the budget. It matters about prophecy now. Okay, but yeah, man, you look at it, you be like, God damn, how America keep the damn petrodollar, man. All right, the petrodollar birth this massive military that we see. All right, that's been dominating the earth for so long. Okay, so let's play a little more. But I think, matter of fact, let me look it up real quick. Okay, just so we can look at it. All right, let's see. America's. Just look up America's military budget compared to everyone else. You know, all that nigga just able to go to war with everybody. You know, just bomb the shit out of everybody. Because one thing he limited in his defensive missiles, but them offensive missiles. You know, that's why the small hats. You know, hey, they just keep going. You know, because when it comes to those, especially those surface, I mean those air to surface missiles on those fighter jets, you know, that nigga got millions of them. You know, and that's why he can just keep striking and striking and striking. You know, when it comes to those, okay. But as far as his defense, you know, he can't absorb. You know, American military ain't meant to absorb. You know, a lot of contact. It's meant to give. Okay, is meant to give punishment, but it ain't built to absorb punishment. Okay, it says American military budget compared to every other nation. Let's see what they give us on Google. Let's see. Then we'll get back to that. All right, so the United States has the world's largest military budget, consistently exceeding the combined defense spending of the next seven, all right, to 10 highest nations. So the next seven nations combined, all right, their military budget, Russia, China, all of them combined, all right, don't compare, okay, to the American military budget, man. Okay. And it says with a 2024 budget of nearly a trillion, the US accounts for 40% of global military expenditures, dwarfing second place China's spending by more than 2.7 times. All right, so the US budget defense was approximately 916 billion to 997 billion. Okay. So yeah, man, it's double. All right, because you got China that's next with 239, 317 billion. Russia next to 86 to 150 billion. Okay, and the others don't even matter. All right, you see. But just to show you that this petrodollar allowed the devil to do this. You know, they have just this crazy, insane military budget. You know, and also invest in technology. Okay, you go into data centers. America's has by far, way more data centers than everyone else. All right, and the only thing America lacking in is, its citizens on board, okay, with the digital system. You know, and then that's why the least gonna have to bring havoc, all right, to the citizens of America, okay, to make them submit, to this new system, man. Okay, so let's go back here. All right, but he's going to explain it, and this makes sense when you look at these wars and why military, because every war, all right, the scriptures say all wars are banker wars, okay, and that becomes more and more, all right, true, each war, that becomes, each as time goes by, all right, the military serves more interests of the elites and none of the interests of the people. Okay, so let's play this.
The numbers that follow this arrangement are extraordinary. In 1971, the year Nixon closed the gold window, total US federal debt was $408 billion. By 1980, it was $908 billion. By 1990, it was $3.2 trillion. By 2000, it was $5.6 trillion. By 2010, it It was $13.5 trillion. Today it stands above $36 trillion. None of this destroyed the dollar's reserve status. None of this triggered the kind of currency collapse that would have incinerated any other country running these numbers, because the petrodollar system meant the world had no choice but to keep absorbing American debt. Saudi Arabia alone recycled hundreds of billions of oil revenues back into US Treasury bonds over the following decades. The precise figures were kept secret under the terms of the original arrangement. It was not until a Bloomberg investigative report in 2016 that the scale of Saudi Treasury holdings was officially disclosed. The number, when finally revealed, was $117 billion, accumulated over 40 years, hidden in plain sight inside the global financial system. But the recycling was not only Saudi. Every oil-exporting nation accumulated dollar reserves. Every central bank that needed to buy oil held dollar reserves as a buffer. The Bank of Japan, the Bundesbank, the People's Bank of China, as it industrialized in the 1990s and 2000s, all of them holding dollars, all of them providing structural demand that kept the currency stable regardless of how much of it Washington printed. The US military was funded in part by the rest of the world's need to hold dollar reserves. The welfare state was funded in part by the same mechanism. The financial system that produced Wall Street's decades of dominance was built on the foundation that Nixon and Kissinger poured in the desert in 1974. If you are understanding for the first time why the dollar has not collapsed despite the debt numbers that would have destroyed any other currency in history, subscribe to the Financial Autopsy. This channel runs the forensic record of how financial power is actually built and how it actually ends. Not the textbook version, the documented record. It is free, and this story is not finished yet. Part 3. The Man Who Tried to Break It. Muammar Gaddafi understood the petrodollar system, and he spent the better part of 4 decades trying to dismantle it. In 1973, the same year the oil embargo was reshaping the global financial order, Gaddafi nationalized Libya's oil industry and expelled American and British oil companies. He also began publicly arguing that Arab nations should price oil not in dollars but in a basket of currencies, or better still, in gold. For most of his rule, this was noise. Libya was a mid-sized oil producer. Its influence on the global pricing mechanism was limited. But in 2009, something changed. At an African Union summit, Gaddafi proposed the creation of a single African currency backed by gold. He called it the gold dinar. The plan, as documented in diplomatic cables later released by WikiLeaks, was to establish a Pan-African central bank that would price African oil and resources in gold, rather than dollars. The proposal had backing from several African heads of state. A diplomatic cable from the US Embassy in Tripoli, dated 2008, assessed Gaddafi's financial intentions with notable directness. It described his accumulated sovereign wealth fund, valued at the time at approximately $32 billion in liquid assets, and flagged his stated intention to move away from dollar-denominated oil transactions. In 2011, NATO forces supported the rebel movement that overthrew and killed Gaddafi. The official justification was humanitarian intervention. The forensic financial record shows that within months of the intervention, the new Libyan government had established a Western-aligned central bank. The gold dinar proposal died with its author. Whether the petrodollar was a primary motive for the intervention is contested. What is not contested?
You're damn right. The petrodollar was a primary motive. Okay, and when these certain leaders come into power in these oil-rich nations, and they kick out, those European companies, and they nationalize, the oil, which means the oil revenue come back to their nation instead of being extrapolated by these private Edomite companies. Well, what do? They demonize them and say this leader is inhumane. Okay, they demonized Gaddafi. Okay, which Libya had no debt. Okay, electricity was free. All right, newlyweds got free housing. College graduates got stipends, $50,000 stipends. Okay, Libya was good. The Libyan people got dividends, which they got a profit share. Okay, of the nation's oil. Okay, and that was all during Gaddafi. Now, okay, Libya, all right, their oil is back pegged to the petrodollar. All right, those Edomite private companies get all the profits of the oil, and the Libyan people, okay, are third world. Okay, and this is what these devils do. The military, America, NATO, and EU is built to destabilize, all right, so these private all right corporations can come and capitalize off the resources, man, and mainly oil. Okay, this is this devil. By thy sword thou shalt live. Okay, because to keep this petrodollar system propped up, all these nations have to be on board. Okay, all these nations have to be on board when it comes to this war. Venezuela, they tried to get cute with their oil. Okay, their sword, it came with their sword. Okay, and he's gonna go into Iraq. You know, they tried the same thing. The sword, by thy sword shalt thou live, shalt thou remain to live prosperously, man. That sword. Okay.
Tested is the sequence of events. Gaddafi proposed a gold-backed alternative to dollar oil pricing. He was removed. Libya's central bank was immediately restructured on Western lines. The sequence is documented. The interpretation is yours. Saddam Hussein is the clearer case. In November 2000, Iraq announced it was switching its oil sales from dollars to euros. It was the first OPEC member to formally abandon dollar pricing since the system was established. Saddam framed it partly as political defiance and partly as financial logic. The euro had been strengthening. Dollar-denominated oil revenues were worth less in real terms. In March 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. By June 2003, Iraqi oil sales had been switched back to dollars. Again, the interpretation is contested. The stated rationale for the invasion was weapons of mass destruction that were never found. The forensic financial timeline is what it is. Iran has been pricing a portion of its oil in euros.
And then you look at, okay, they went in March 2003, and the dollar in 3 months, I mean, the oil in 3 months was back on the dollar. Okay, it was back on the dollar in 3 months, and that was the whole objective of the elites, to get their oil back on the dollar. Saddam, all right, wanted to be cute with the oil. Okay, and they sent in the American military. This is the purpose of the American military. Okay, it has nothing to do with defending the homeland of America. Okay, from foreign threats. It has nothing to do with that. All right, the American military stays activated for the interests of the elites. The American Navy, okay, it protects the traffic, okay, and the shipping lanes of the elites. Okay, it has nothing to do with the functioning with the normal functioning of a military. All right, and why did they stay in Iraq so long? Okay, because the defense contractors get rich off wars, and when you have places that are destabilized, all right, this devil is these contractors, these defense contractors get rich off the weapons, and then you have these American contractors for construction. These construction contractors, they come and get rich off the rebuilding, man. Okay, so it's not even about America, winning wars militarily, man. It's about the interests of the elites. Okay, that's why most of the things that America does, it doesn't make sense militarily. And I'm coming to see that it never has made sense militarily. It's always the interest of the elites. Okay, so let's play this a little more.
Euros and then yuan since 2012, when US sanctions made dollar transactions impossible. It remains under continuous economic and military pressure from Washington. The pattern across every country that has meaningfully challenged dollar oil pricing is consistent. The challenge is made, the response is significant, the dollar pricing is maintained or restored. Part 4. The cracks appear. The petrodollar system is not collapsing. Let the forensic record be precise on this. But it is under more structural pressure than at any point since 1974. And the nature of that pressure tells you exactly what to watch. The first crack is China. In 2018, the Shanghai International Energy Exchange launched the first yuan-denominated oil futures contract. For the first time, oil could be priced, settled, and delivered in a currency other than the dollar on a major regulated exchange. The contract attracted immediate participation from Russia, Iran, and several Middle Eastern producers. China is now the world's largest oil importer. It surpassed the United States in net oil imports in 2013 and has not looked back. When the world's largest buyer of oil decides to pay in its own currency, the arithmetic of the petrodollar system begins to change. The second crack is Saudi Arabia itself. In January 2023, Saudi Finance Minister Mohammed Al-Jadaan told the World Economic Forum in Davos that Saudi Arabia was open to trading oil in currencies other than the US dollar. This was not a rogue statement from a minor official. This was the finance minister of the country whose agreement with William Simon in 1974 created the petrodollar system in the first place. In 2023, Saudi Arabia joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a dialogue partner. It has conducted oil transactions with China settled in yuan. The volume remains small relative to total Saudi oil exports. The direction is not. The third crack is the weaponization of the dollar itself. In February 2022, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the United States and its allies froze approximately $300 billion in Russian central bank reserves held in Western financial institutions. This was the largest sovereign asset freeze in history. The message it sent to every central bank on earth that was not a close US ally was unambiguous. The dollar reserves you hold are not your property in any ultimate sense. They are held on terms set by Washington. Washington can change those terms. In the 12 months following the Russian asset freeze, central bank gold purchases globally hit their highest level since records began. Over 1,000 tons in 2022, over 1,000 tons in 2023, over 1,000 tons in 2024. 3 consecutive years of record buying. These are not the actions of institutions that are confident the dollar will remain the uncontested reserve currency indefinitely. Part 5. What the historical record says happens next. The forensic record of reserve currency transitions gives you one framework for reading what is happening now, and that record contains a lesson that is both reassuring and alarming, depending on where you sit. Reserve currency transitions do not happen overnight. They happen over decades, and they are almost never.
Yeah, we know this nigga ain't got a decade, all right? Because ultimately, they're going to intentionally tank the dollar to bring in a new currency, all right? Because they need another system of control, okay? The dollar, the petrodollar was a control mechanism, all right, that, had all these nations, okay, under, the control of the petrodollar. That's why those sanctions, at one time they were devastating to nations, man. Which they still are to most nations, but you have, a handful of nations, all right, which these nations have a particular purpose and prophecy. Okay. That's why those sanctions aren't affecting certain nations, because these nations have a role in prophecy, okay, in turning America to a desert. So when you go to Russia, China, and Iran, all right, even North Korea, where those sanctions don't have the biggest impact, they can survive outside the sanctions, man. And this is why these devils want to bring a central bank digital control, a digital currency, man. Okay, which is going to be a system of more control. It's another level of control beyond the petrodollar. Okay, because these nations have found ways to work around the petrodollar, man. Okay, so let's go here. That's one of the reasons. Several reasons. For the CBDC. The control of civilian transactions, and another control of social engineering. Because if they are able to have that much control of currency, they can take social engineering of the people to another level. That's why it's called a social credit, all right, system, all right, a social credit system, which they have it in China already, all right, for the civilians, because the petrodollar, as strong as it's been and much control as it's had, well, these devils want to take it to another level. Okay, so let's get a few precepts. Okay, and this plays a lot into the devil's pride. When you go into let's get this in the book of Ezekiel 28. Let's get to the point. Okay, because this man, has created a system where he turned paper into gold. Okay, literally, man. This is Ezekiel 28:5. It says, with thy wisdom and with thy understanding, thou hast gotten the riches. Okay, So the devil was able to conjure up a system, okay, a crafty system to where he was able to extrapolate wealth from the earth, man. Put nations in debt, okay, weaponize, this currency against nations to get nations to submit, to his agenda, okay, to buy people off, man, because he's just able to print all this money, so he's buying people off ain't nothing. you know, it says it has gotten gold and silver into thy treasures, okay, by thy great wisdom and by traffic has thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches, man. So this devil was able to accumulate, okay, an enormous amount of wealth and assets, based on the system of falsehood, man. This man was able to get people to trade, okay, wealth for paper. you see, and you go into the word traffic because traffic, deals with what trade. All right, commerce. When you deal with the word traffic, all right, let's get it in. Let's see. And it plays a part into the devil's, you know, um, it's called hubris. Okay, his crazy pride. Okay, so you got rakallah. All right, in the Hebrew rakallah, which goes into merchandise traffic to trade. Okay, merchandise, man. And he created this reserve currency. All right, that controls global trade, global merchandise. All right, because with that dollar, you can buy anything on the earth. With these dollar purchases, okay, you're able to get anything. Okay, so the dollar, the dollar has been in demand, okay, for the last 50 years, man. Okay, for the last 50 years, man, the dollar has been in high demand. But now we're the time, all right, of the devil's collapse. The Lord lifted this man up. Now, okay, he's done. Let's go here. Um, let's get this in Zephaniah. And this is where we at now, man. This is Zephaniah chapter 1 and verse get to the point of Zephaniah 1 and 14. It says, the great day of the Lord is near, it is near, and hasted greatly. Even the voice of the day of the Lord, the mighty man shall cry there bitterly, man. See, the day of the Lord is at hand. You see, we at the time where the Heavenly Father is finna send back Yahweh shot in the midst of a nuclear destruction, man. Okay, that's why you go to verse 15 to describe that day, because it's gonna be tribulation building up to the actual day of the Lord. Because the day of the Lord refers to a certain time building up to that actual day. Okay, which is going to be a time of tribulation, a time where these devils are going to be trying to reset, okay, and establish a new world order. Okay, Zephaniah 1 and 15 said that day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, man. And these are the nukes, man. Okay, what they call the dark winter, the effect from the nukes, man. Okay, where it turns daytime into night, man, all that thick smoke and clouds. Okay, so this is what it's all leading to. The Lord's going to utterly destroy everything that this man has set up. Okay, it says a day of trumpet and alarm against the fenced cities and against the high towers, and I will bring disgrace upon men, that they shall walk like blind men because they have sinned against the Lord, and their dust shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh, okay, as the dawn. Okay, so it doesn't matter, the schemes and the craftiness, okay, that this devil, has been able to prosper in. Well, these things are finna be destroyed, man. Everything that the devil has built up is finna be destroyed. Okay, verse 18 said, neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath, but the whole land shall be devoured by fire of his jealousy, and he shall make even a speedy radiance of all them that dwell in the land. Okay? So it doesn't matter, like I said, all these schemes and plots and this agenda and that agenda and this witchcraft, all it's a non-factor at this point. Okay, it's coming to where everything that the devil, is used to using to prosper with. Well, these things are becoming a non-factor because of prophecy, man. Okay, America's gonna be completely destroyed, turned into a desert. Okay, the militaries of the earth are going to be destroyed by Yahweh Shai and the chariots. Okay, the earth is going to shake to and fro, bringing down the infrastructure, everything this devil, is built up, man. Okay, and these devils go into captivity. Okay, the elite, all right, themselves, man. Okay, these coward bankers, they go into captivity. Okay, so I'll leave it there. That's the point. Lord will. All right, you brothers. All right, then. You sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessing, salutation, hopefully, shalom.